Revelation 3364. From the 12th of December 1944. Conflict of body and soul. Cooperation of there. What serves the best of the soul will usually not be felt very pleasantly by the body as long as the soul and the body are in conflict with each other. For the body demands what is detrimental to the soul but helps it to feel more comfortable. And if the soul is to progress in its development, much must be taken from the body so that the soul is not hindered in its striving. So the thinking, feeling and willing must, so to speak, be forcibly diverted from the earthly, that is, the body must be considered in this way, that is, the body must be so thought of with renunciations and disappointments of all kinds that the soul distances itself in its thinking from the things that please the body and can devote itself to its actual task, the work on itself. The soul finds it difficult on its own, therefore it is helped by God in so far as the human being's fate in life has many disappointments in store. Thus life approaches the human being in such a way that bodily desire is sparsely provided for, that earthly goods and pleasures are lost to it, and that thereby the soul has the opportunity to progress, thus to learn to overcome earthly things and to develop progressively. It is different, however, when soul and body strive for higher development, when the body always yields to the soul's desire, thus participating, as it were, in the work of transformation, which is the purpose of earthly life. Then the renunciations and disappointments will no longer be so needed, and therefore the body can also be spared, for as soon as both soul and body strive towards God in accordance with the desire of the Spirit within them, they will never let themselves be diverted from this striving, even though the world approaches them with its demands or enticements. They are won over for the spiritual kingdom, the Spirit in them works too powerfully and they can stand in the midst of life without worrying. They no longer fall back into the desire for only earthly goods but distance themselves more and more from them despite possessing them, for the spiritual good is more desirable to them once they have received it. Disappointments and sufferings of all kinds are therefore always a warning against slackening in spiritual striving, or they should contribute to increased activity of the will, so that the work on oneself is carried out with the greatest intensity, because greater demands are placed on the human being in the field of redeeming activity. This work requires perseverance and self-denial, and the human being must be educated to disregard the body but to shape the life of the soul in such a way that it completely corresponds to God's will, that God's Spirit can become active in order to make him capable of the spiritual work which is redemptive. If, however, the body is ready for the same work, then neither joys nor sufferings of the soul are an obstacle to higher development. Then the influence of the Divine Spirit on the soul is so strong that it can never be diminished by impressions. The spiritual striving will always be in the foreground and never diminish, for the soul is completely controlled by the Spirit within itself, nor does it have the will to withdraw from its influence. On the contrary, it draws the body into the spiritual realm. It determines it to completely join the Spirit's urging, thus to comply with everything the Spirit demands of the soul. And thus soul and body are now subject to the Spirit in themselves, and this results in a faster maturing and thus also a special ability to be active for God, thus to participate in the redemption of the bound. However, the human being is in no way forced to do so, but the will is placed into him. It is stimulated by everlasting spiritual instructions which reach the human being in the form of thoughts and which are again supported or affirmed by the divine word which is offered as evidence of divine love and omnipotence to people who want to receive and pass it on. For this word will be in accordance with the thoughts of the one who consciously works on himself. And the latter will be accepted by God as a laborer for his vineyard. His earthly life will now be guided and his spiritual activity blessed, and he will never ever be released from God's service. He will find support through people who are of the same spirit. He will also receive earthly strength by living his life in such a way that he will not be hindered in his striving. Thus earthly events can also approach him without seriously endangering him spiritually once he has offered himself to God for service. Then his body will also no longer be self-centered but always and in every way submit itself to the soul and the spirit. He will listen in joy and suffering to the inner voice through which God's Spirit makes itself known, for he recognizes his purpose of earthly life and is willing to contribute to the redemption of the bound. The voice of the Spirit will therefore penetrate and never be drowned out by earthly sufferings or joys, and the latter can therefore also be granted to the spiritually striving person without seriously endangering his ascent development. Amen.